What is up, and welcome to the Red and Bold Show. We're excited to have you, excited to talk 49ers football, and excited to watch the 49ers play on Thursday night. Although, when it comes to Sunday, that's going to kind of stink. But hey, at least the 49ers will have played and can have a little bit of a break before they match up against the Miami Dolphins the week after that. My name is Marc Adams. I am one of your hosts here. You can find me at 49ers Camelot. I'm joined by my co-host, Anthony Robertson, who you can find at 49ers Cutback. How's it going, Ant?
It's going good, and you bring up a good point about no 49ers football on Sunday. The only good thing is if the 49ers are able to beat the Los Angeles Rams, which I hope they can, then that means Sunday is going to be very enjoyable. We get to watch the Seattle Seahawks play the Green Bay Packers. And if the Green Bay Packers are able to win that, all of a sudden the Seahawks come one game closer back to the 49ers. So it is definitely one of those times where you're not just watching your team, but you're also watching other teams around the league. And you get to root for other people's failures, which is always interesting to do. Is we want Seattle to struggle. We want Arizona to struggle. We want the Washington Commanders to struggle. And that's always a fun time of the year where you're actually rooting for people to lose.
Yeah. This just in from Matt Barrows on X. Out for Thursday's game, Trent Williams, no surprise there. Ben Barch, no surprise. But Malik Mustafa is also out, which means Talanoa Hufanga and Jair Brown will be the starting safeties. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't know if I feel comfortable with Jair Brown. I almost would rather they go with Deshaun Gibson. Why not go with Hufanga and Gibson? But yeah, Malik Mustafa, that definitely surprises me. He's been playing so well, and I knew that he was nicked up, but I didn't think he was going to be out. The short turnaround definitely hinders the 49ers. And I would rather have Deshaun Gibson and Talanoa Hufanga playing together than Jair Brown. To me, Gibson is going to be in the right place, the right time. And that right now is more important. That veteran leadership is what they need. I think Jair Brown should be 4 on the depth chart normally when Malik is healthy. So we'll see what they end up doing. My guess is it's probably going to be Jair, but I sure hope they pull the trigger on Deshaun Gibson playing with Hufanga.
Barrows also said that questionable are Nick Bosa, Isaac Guerendo, Dre Greenlaw, and Khalil Davis, which are no surprises there. But yeah, that Mustafa thing means that is definitely a surprise. Let's see. He says no Mustafa means that Talanoa Hufanga, Jair Brown likely will start. Deshaun Gibson in the mix too. Greenlaw was a full participant Wednesday, albeit in a walkthrough setting. Bosa was limited Wednesday after not practicing in recent weeks. Guerendo also was limited Wednesday. So hopefully some of these guys can get back. It's tough on these short weeks.
Yeah, I think I expect Drake Greenlaw to play. I think that Greenlaw is going to get activated and he's going to play in this game. But yeah, you're right. When you have some sort of an injury, it's a short turnaround. I think it is good news as well that Isaac Guerendo is questionable and not doubtful. That's good news. And also good news that Nick Bosa is listed as questionable, which is upgrade over last week where he was listed as doubtful. So these guys got a chance to play, and we'll see. If the 49ers somehow got Nick Bosa and Dre Greenlaw back this week, that would be a huge lift for the 49ers defense. That could be a giant move in the right direction and come at the right time where they really need something to happen against the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, that's huge. Let's see. Josh is in the chat here. He writes that Brock had a 137.1 rating the first time we played the Rams, and that was without Debo or Kittle. That being said, Juwan Jennings should eat again. Hopefully that will be the case. We're going to talk about that matchup here in just a minute, but I want to break down a few things from last week's game against the Chicago Bears. When you went back and watched the film, how much of an impact did Talanoa Hufanga's return have on the defense? Because we'll talk offense. The offense was dominant. The defense was much better than they have been all season. Part of that is probably the Bears, but part of it was just that the defense was making plays. How much of that was Talanoa Hufanga returning?
Yeah, he played a huge part in it. And it's amazing, right? The better players you have on the field, the better your defense is going to be. I mean, it's not rocket science when you really think about it. But he did such a great job. And part of it is his intellect, how smart he is when it comes to football, just making sure everyone's lined up correctly, making sure he's where he's supposed to be. And we saw it from the opening snap of the game. The Chicago Bears are on offense, and it's the first play for the 49ers on defense. And Hufanga walks into the box, so you present an 8-man box, and they still have a lane to run the football. And he knifes in and he makes the tackle. And so many times this season, we've seen that safety position miss that tackle. And instead of it being a 3-yard gain, it's a 7-yard gain. And all of a sudden now they're in a situation where they're 2nd and 3 and feeling comfortable with their drive. But instead, he stopped them to a gain of 2. And after that happened, it just changes the way that the drive is played. And the 49ers end up getting a 3 and out because they have a situation where Chicago has a 3rd and long. And so those types of plays are huge. We also seen it in coverage where he's definite about where he's supposed to be, and he gets on his guy and he makes sure he makes plays, and he wasn't making mistakes. And that was really huge in this football game. So Hufanga being back helped the entire secondary, but not just that, it helped the entire defense because he was making the plays he's supposed to make. And when you lead the team when it comes to tackle percentage, he did not miss tackles, even though he only has one hand. It was a really good job by Hufanga and huge for the 49ers.
Yeah. And the pass rush did really well. They sacked Caleb Williams, I think it was 7 times, something like that. They really got after him, put a lot of pressure on him. Was the pass rush that good, or was it just that the Bears were that bad?
The Bears do give up sacks. They had given up 49 sacks going into that football game. Caleb Williams holds onto the football a lot. And so that is definitely one of their weaknesses. But the 49ers pass rush was good as well. I think some of it was a combination of really good coverage combined with the pass rush. So sometimes it was just a pass rush. Sometimes it was some blitzes by Nick Sorensen that developed some opportunities. And then sometimes it was the coverage. But what it was the marriage of the front and the back end working together to get after the quarterback. And it was good to see Yetur Gross-Matos getting home on some of those matchups. And Leonard Floyd continuing his hot streak right now as he's up to 8.5 sacks this season. It was a good performance from those guys and a trend in the right direction. So is it partly because Chicago Bears aren't good at stopping teams from getting to the quarterback? Yes. But also it was a good job by the 49ers.
Yeah. And on the offensive side, I mean, when people say, yeah, the 49ers are great, but look who they were playing. Okay, so we can say that about the defense, but the offense was going against a pretty good Bears defense, and yet they were really dominant without Jordan Mason, without Christian McCaffrey, without Brandon Ayuk, without Trent Williams, without Aaron Banks, and yet they still I mean, this is the best that they've played all season. It looked like the 2023 version of the 49ers. What was it that that you saw that you really thought played a big part in this as far as being different from what they had been doing all season long?
Yeah, I mean, as far as concepts, it wasn't different. You still seen the same route concepts, the same things that Kyle Shanahan does all the time. I think it was just the execution and then a little bit of sprinkled things in that Kyle wanted to do in this game, taking advantage of the edge rushers of Chicago, getting upfield and running those screen passes. That was really nice. Wanting to stretch the team horizontally with screen passes. That was really good. But also the play action pass. And we've been talking about this for weeks. And I started mentioning last week, I wanted to see them return to a 2019 version of the offense where Brock Purdy was running, the outside zone plays in the run game, giving it to the running back that way, but then creating those boots off of that. They did that a lot in this football game. And there were some plays where it's not like 1 or 2 guys were open, but like 5 eligible receivers are all open and Brock Purdy has his choice. It looked very 49ers-esque, the 2019 version where Jimmy Garoppolo had his pick of where he could throw the ball. And it just felt that way. Chicago was out of sorts, but I got to give a lot of credit to Brock Purdy as well. A lot of conversation this season has been Brock Purdy should be able to change the play to the line of scrimmage. I think everyone that's been on X has seen that conversation. And they've been saying it's all built in. It's all built into the offense. Well, in this game, when Chicago decided to blitz, he went to where it was built in for him to take advantage of the rotation. Because if he blitzed someone, you got to rotate the defense to make up for that. And when he did, he hit big plays. George Kittle on a big crosser. There were other plays as well. It was just a good performance for the 49ers. They're a little return to the old school way of doing things, and I thought it paid huge dividends against Chicago.
Yeah, he was really good. He looked like he did the last 2 years, and like he looked earlier in the season before things kind of started falling apart. But last week we talked about is he the answer long term at quarterback? When you talk about paying 50 or 60 million a year for a quarterback, he looked like that guy on Sunday, and so it's going to be interesting to see. I think that they'll extend him, give him a new contract in the offseason. And I think that it's going to happen shortly after the season. In 2018, after Jimmy Garoppolo came in 2017 and played those final 5 games for the 49ers, they signed him to a new contract pretty quick. Now, I think he was scheduled to be a free agent, so that's probably part of the reason. But another issue is that you don't want a Brandon Ayuk or Nick Bosa type situation or Trent Williams type situation with your quarterback. If they don't sign Brock Purdy until after training camp, like they've done with some of these guys, like Nick Bosa was signed the week of the first game of last season, you do that with your quarterback and your season's already over.
Yeah, they're going to make sure they take care of this thing early. They have created the salary cap space to be able to take on a Brock Purdy contract, and I think they understand what they want that contract to look like, the framework, the money. They're going to have this thing all worked out, so that way they can button this thing up. The good thing is you've got 2 motivated sides to get it done. 49ers want to get it done so they can finish building their team and extend this window into the future. And you've got a motivated Brock Purdy who wants to get it done, because the one thing that we've learned from him is he wants to get back to work, and he doesn't want any hiccups in that. So he's going to want to be out there with his guys and moving forward and being a team leader. So I think I don't really worry about this situation as much as others. I think they're going to get it done. This is the closest thing to Fred Warner that I've seen, where Fred, we knew he was going to be motivated to get it done. He wanted to be about business. And I think that's what we're going to get here from Brock Purdy. I think you're right. I think it'll get done early because they have plenty of decisions to make and some guys they need to bring in, and they just continue to free up salary cap space in 2025 and beyond to bring in those players to make sure they can keep this window open and go after a Super Bowl.
How impressive was Isaac Guerendo in his first NFL start?
I thought it was pretty good. I know a lot of people are blowing him up like, hey, Guerendo was fantastic. I thought he was good. And I thought that there were areas that he can still get better. I still seen him miss some run lanes where he could have got some extra yards. But there was a lot to like. I think him in the passing game was really big. The 2 catches that he had for 50 yards were huge. And there's a trust factor with Brock Purdy throwing it to Guerendo. I mean, you could tell right away he felt comfortable just going ahead and getting the Guerendo the ball, where we didn't normally see that from Jordan Mason. So that was nice to see. But also, I think with Guerendo, the physicality and the speed. He'll finish runs. He doesn't have any problem trying to run someone over. I like that. Falling forward, getting extra yards, that's huge. But also the ability to hit the speed. That play they ran, where they ran the fake to Debo and they give it to him on the inside, they got 2 guys set to get him. Tremaine Edmonds was right there. He could have got him. Too much speed from Isaac Guerendo. Then you've got Kevin Byard, the safety. He's got an angle on him. Wrong angle. He broke it because of that speed, gets to the edge, and you get an explosive run. Those are the elements you love from the young running back. The problem is we're still not getting the key runs where he's reading the blocks perfectly. It happens sometimes, but there's still situations. It's an outside zone play. He cuts it up too early, or there's a counter play and he doesn't go with the play. He stays the other side and runs right where he was going before, where he had explosive runs that he kind of let slip away. So it's a good performance, not a great performance, but that's good news because he affected the game in a big way, and it wasn't even a great performance. Imagine what he could do when it is a great performance.
Yeah, I really like him in the passing game. As a runner, I would like to see him maybe take advantage of having Frank Gore in the building, because I think that he takes too many big hits. He needs to figure out, now he's a big guy, and that's part of the reason why, but if he could figure out how to make himself a little smaller so he doesn't take so many big hits, and Frank Gore was elite at that. And so that's one thing that I would like to see him get better at this offseason. What's wrong with Deebo Samuel? I'm not going to be one of the ones to say he looks slow, because I don't really know that, because on the kickoff returns, he's moving, and when he gets into like an open field, he turns on the jets, but he's not breaking tackles like he normally does. And more importantly, I don't like the fact, like, I don't have any problem with what he said this week when he talked about not getting the ball enough, and then the next day when the reporters were asking him questions and he said, "You read what you read," that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's frustration. I don't have a problem with that. I want my wide receivers to want the ball every play. Jerry Rice was the same way. So I want that. What I don't like is calling out the kicker and shoving the long snapper in the throat or whatever it was he did. And then meanwhile, you're not getting your job done. And then you kind of pass the buck onto, well, I'm not getting the ball enough. That's the part that I don't like. It's not the complaining that he's not getting the ball. It's that it seems like he lacks some accountability. But beyond that, what do you think of that? But at the same time, why is he? Because he's just, I mean, this guy was a human bowling ball, like the king of broken tackles, it seemed like, and he's just not breaking those tackles right now.
Yeah, I don't ever have a problem with what Deebo said. I think Deebo is one of those guys that's pretty tied in, especially because he does the podcast and stuff, that he hears the noise. He's one of those guys that actually hears it. A lot of the players turn it off, don't listen to it. He hears it. A lot of times it motivates him. So usually a ticked off Deebo is a good thing for the 49ers and for Deebo himself. I think that in this game in particular, it wasn't so much on Deebo as it was on, there was some really bad blocking for Deebo Samuel. There's a screenplay. They have it set up. If Spencer Burford or Jalen Moore can block anyone, Deebo Samuel probably has a big play. But there is just not those situations right now. There's run plays that they gave to him, and people automatically blame Deebo Samuel for not getting yards. What are you supposed to do when a linebacker sitting in the hole because your pulling guard got tripped up? Dominic Pooney gets tripped up. He gets stepped on. He doesn't block anyone. The linebacker's right there to meet him in the hole. Nobody's getting away from that. I don't care if you're Christian McCaffrey. I don't care who you are. You're getting tackled. Those types of things are frustrating. So I think some of Deebo's statement is frustration, but that's also why he reiterated with another tweet that it's not about his teammates, because what he really wants to say is, if guys would make freaking blocks, I would make something happen. And I think that's a little bit frustrating for him. So has it been a disappointing season for Deebo? Yes. Has he played up to expectation? No. Is it all on Deebo? I don't think so. But I don't think it's all on his teammates either. I think it's been back and forth between the two. Sometimes he doesn't get it done. Sometimes they don't. In this particular game, I put it more on his teammates than I put it on him. But they'll figure this thing out, and they'll figure out how to get Deebo the ball. And I like a motivated Deebo. Go out there and make something happen. Be frustrated. Be mad at people, because I think angry Deebo is the best Deebo.
Yeah, that's true. You and I have probably defended Jake Moody more than anybody outside of the 49ers building. But I have to say, like, he made his field goals and his PATs on Sunday, but I don't know what was going on with those kickoffs where he had two of them that didn't even go far enough and land in that little zone area that is supposed to land in. What in the world was going on with that?
That's the craziest thing, is I just automatically thought that they were trying to bounce it, into the zone, like, hit it in that landing zone and let it bounce to kind of mess up the return. I thought it was a called thing by Schneider. So when Kyle Shanahan talks to the media and he says, "Oh no, he's trying to kick it deep, but sometimes you miss it and you don't kick it right." That really got me. I'm like, holy cow, like, you can't mess up that bad. Come on.
Yeah.
This is a little frustrating for sure when it comes to Jake Moody. Is there's just been so many inconsistencies, and I get it. The real reason they drafted Jake Moody was the long leg. We get that, but also it was the leg to be able to, get hang time in the kickoff, because if you could direct it, to the goal line and then get hang time, you were going to get better returns. They did not know the league was going to change the kickoff rules. So I understand that, but he's got to be better than this. He should just be driving the football out of the end zone every single time. This shouldn't even be a conversation. The
Yeah,
fact it is
definitely.
frustrating. So I have no defense of Jake Moody on this. None. You've got to be better than this. And I expect for him to pick it up and do it right. If not, I hope somebody else tells him to lock in, because he does need to lock in and get it done, because that's just frustrating.
Yeah, it's one thing to miss a kick. It's one thing to miss a kick in the snow, but to mess up your kickoff, on a perfect day, that just made no sense. I don't understand that. Mr. Corey's in the chat and he said Moody sucks, and so on his kickoffs he certainly did the other day. He also has a question here. Do you guys think the 49ers should move on from Juice and Debo? I'll let you answer the Debo question. I don't believe that they'll move off of him, because it's going to be a huge cap hit if they do, unless it's after June 1st. But Kyle Juszczyk, I think, and like I think he's still playing well, but at the price that they're paying him, I think that it's probably time to move on.
With Kyle Juszczyk, it all comes down to what Kyle's thought process is with what he wants to run personnel-wise. This game against Chicago, he ran a lot of 21 personnel, Kyle Juszczyk on the field, and Juszczyk blocked really well. We've seen him bring guys in before that he thought were going to maybe push Kyle Juszczyk, and they've taken a look at it. None of those guys have worked out. The 49ers have not been able to find another Kyle Juszczyk, or at least somebody they thought could, get it done enough. So that one is going to get close. At some point, right, Kyle Juszczyk is going to run out of time just because he's getting older. I think his play has dipped a little bit, but he did take a pay cut. So I don't know exactly. I think it's going to come down to when Kyle decides that he needs to move on from Kyle Juszczyk and find somebody else to fit that role, or go away from 21 personnel the way that he currently runs it. But I don't think he wants to put George Kittle in the backfield to run 21 personnel. Eric Saubert and Jake Tunges, they can't do it. So there's nobody right now that answers or fills that hole. So that one's a little bit tough, but it's coming. They've got to figure this thing out eventually. Maybe they will. Maybe a guy will come along. A guy like a Tommy Tremble will be a free agent here from Carolina. That guy would probably fit that role. Maybe they'll find someone eventually. With Debo, I think you're right. It's either a June 1, post June 1 cut, or he's with the team. I think he's going to be with the team next year. I don't think anything they're doing right now is setting up that they're going to eliminate a lot of salary. I think they're still locking in. They think they've got a window with this current group the way it is, and they're going to run it till the wheels fall off. So I wouldn't be surprised to see both of these guys on the team next year.
Yeah, you could be right about Kyle Juszczyk. You're definitely right about Debo. I don't think he's going anywhere, because if they did cut him after June 1st, while it may help the salary cap situation, it's not necessarily going to make the team better. And if you're going to trade away a player like Debo Samuel, you're going to do it first. You're going to do it off of a good year, not off of a down year. And second, you're going to do it before the draft so that you can draft somebody who can help the team that year. Unless they trade him for another player who can come in and play a different position or even the same position. But I still don't think that that's going to happen. I think that Debo Samuel will be on the team in 2025, whether fans like it or not. I think that that's going to happen. And maybe he'll be motivated. Like you said, an angry Debo is a good Debo. So hopefully he'll come back motivated. But it is strange how you've said it multiple times that in training camp, he looked the best he had looked in a while. And we really both expected a big season out of him, and it just hasn't happened. But there are other factors. This has been a 2020 type season with so many injuries, and a lot of sloppiness and a lot of bad play, and not just from young players. I mean, the rookies. You look at all the rookies that have played; they've been really solid. It's been a lot of the stars who have played poorly at times, and whether it's Ayuk or Debo or what have you, it hasn't necessarily been the younger players. It's been a lot of the veterans as well.
Yeah, I think that there's been key guys who were out a little bit. Trent Williams being out, I think for training camp really did hurt him. It took him 4 or 5 games to get kind of back to where he normally plays. And then, he gets another injury. So I think we've seen guys not live up to the level of play that we are used to seeing from them. How much of that is just that they're aging, and how much is that maybe things are just a little bit off. I felt like the season has felt like a little bit off as far as execution and things. But this was the first week where it felt like, wow, we're back on. This is 49ers football. Guys were executing at a high level. Guys were able to get open. Kyle Shanahan was doing what he normally does. The defense was getting off the field on third down. Those things are all huge. If you can replicate that, well, you're going to have some opportunities, and some of these playmakers can make plays. And then all of a sudden, Debo starts having big games, and we're not talking about this. We're talking about how big Debo is for this football team. So you're always a game away. You're always a play away. But they've got to figure it out. They got to make sure they can replicate what they did last week.
Let's see. Mr. Corey asks, actually, he's got a couple of things here. First, he says that Jacob Cowing could benefit from Debo leaving. That's been kind of a weird thing, why Cowing isn't being used as much on offense. Another interesting thing is with Ricky Pearsall just not being very productive at all here over the last 3-4 weeks or so. Evan Anderson, the undrafted defensive tackle, has had a bigger impact on this season than the 49ers first round draft pick. That's been kind of strange. His question right after that is, would you guys extend Kittle and Warner? Yes, I would extend Kittle. I don't know where Warner's at in his contract, but Kittle, I definitely think that there's a very good possibility they could extend him this, maybe even this offseason.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, especially if you're going to keep this core group together, kick the can down the road a little bit, create some salary cap space for yourself. But I mean, George Kittle's still playing as the number one tight end in the league. So you just got to figure out how long that's going to last. But it doesn't look like he's slowing down. He's been able to deal with injuries. And with Fred Warner, he's the best linebacker. When he's not hurt, he's the best linebacker in football. Those are mainstays for your football team. Those are pillars that you build upon. So I definitely think they're going to keep them. And when it comes to Cowing and Pearsall, Cowing got some looks in this game where they got him on some vertical routes. So that was nice to see. He also generated some space for Kittle on one of his screen passes. So we're seeing a little bit more of an insertion of Jacob Cowing. His problem still has zero to do with route running, being able to get open. It comes solely on his ability to do the other things, line up correctly, block the way he's supposed to. I think those things are probably going to trend in the right direction for him. With Pearsall, unfortunately, it's been bad situations. So we saw them miss on a deep pass where Pearsall thought he was going to run more across on the post pattern, and you got Brock Purdy wanting him to get more vertical. And so I think that's a situation where Brock should have thrown it out there in front of him. There was no safety out there. Pearsall would have ran under it. That probably would have been a touchdown, a huge play in this game. There's also a missed touchdown for Pearsall, but it's not on Brock and it's not on Pearsall. It's a situation where the offensive line is not able to hold up long enough, or Ricky Pearsall's wide open. In fact, it comes on the drive the 49ers don't get a touchdown. He's open on third down. It would have been a huge one, but Brock has to scramble. So there are opportunities. It's just not quite working out right now. They just can't quite get it together, but at some point they will. I still like what I see from Pearsall.
There are some comments here in the chat, multiple ones. Loretta has one. Moonman has one. Josh has one. Talking about concerns over the 49ers trying to keep Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp from just going off on Thursday night. Let me give you my two things that I'm most concerned about in this Rams game, and I want to see what you think about both. Number one, I'm worried if Isaac Guerendo can't play, I'm worried whether or not the 49ers can run the ball, because we're talking Keyshawn Vaughn, we're talking Patrick Taylor, we're talking the new guy.
Israel Abanikanda.
Yeah, Abanikanda. Is that right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a hard one. And from what I hear, a lot of people are really high on him. I just don't know how much of the offense he's going to know at this point. So that's my first one. If Guerendo can't play, can the 49ers run the ball? And second, can they stop that dangerous offense? I am pretty worried about them getting enough pressure on Matthew Stafford, because if they can't pressure him, he's going to pick them apart. And with those two wide receivers being healthy and ready to go, that could be a long day for the defense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and people are completely right. The 49ers did not play against Cooper Kupp or, Puka Nacua. That's true. The 49ers also didn't have Deebo Samuel or George Kittle in that game either, but a lot of people won't talk about that. Some people did bring it up in chat, which is phenomenal knowledge. I think Loretta said she was at the game. But the 49ers got a situation here where they've been playing the pass really well. If you look at their numbers, they're giving up about 180, 185 yards per game through the air. And part of it was, of course, the Packers and Bills went crazy on the ground game. But that's really where everyone looks at it like they just went off for 44 against the Buffalo Bills. But they also ran the ball like crazy against the Buffalo Bills. Are you going to be able to do that against the 49ers? I think that's the first question. The second one is, when exactly has this explosion for the Rams happened? If you look at what they've been doing offensively, they haven't really been doing a whole lot. They score 15, 20 points a game. I mean, they are averaging less points per game than the 49ers. And I think that they're getting made out to be a juggernaut because of what they did last week. I'm not saying they're not a good team. I'm not saying that they don't have weapons, and Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are two of the best in the league. I believe they're both top 10 wide receivers. But I just don't know if they're going to be able to go out there and just run roughshod through the 49ers secondary without there being some sort of run game going. They average 103 yards per game on the ground. If they can't get Kyron Williams and Blake Corum going, I think the 49ers are going to have an opportunity to get after Matthew Stafford. Third and long is still a big situation. And what is Sean McVay going to do? The last time, what was his game plan? Let's line up in 12 personnel. Let's go heavy. Let's get the 49ers with Demetrius Flanagan fouls on the field because D. Winters is hurt. Well, guess what? That's not happening this time. There's no third linebacker like that. So your game plan goes back to 11 personnel, and it changes. Can you run the ball consistently with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and that offense in 11 personnel? I don't know if they can. That's where it comes. If they can run the football, then yes, I'm with everybody else. I'm worried about Puka. I'm worried about Cooper Kupp. But if they can't consistently run the ball, I think the 49ers are going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it really is a good point that you brought up in the last game that these two met earlier in the season, that the Rams did come out and kind of gave the 49ers a different look than I think what they expected. So that's a great point as well. I do think there's some recency bias with looking at how the Rams played last week and then looking at the game earlier in the season when there was no Puka, no Cooper Kupp, and yet they still had no answer for Tutu Atwell. But there were, like you said, there were a lot of things in that game that went where there was there was a fake punt, I think, that they pulled off. If that doesn't happen, if the 49ers were ready for that, and they said that they were ready, but they still weren't able to stop it. But if they would have stopped that, then maybe the Rams never had a chance to come back in that game, and we're not even concerned about this. But yeah, those were a couple of things that I'm a little concerned about. What about if Guerendo can't run? Do these other backs, do they give you any kind of encouragement that they'll be able to run the ball, or do you think it's Guerendo or nothing?
No, I think they can run the ball. If they don't have Isaac Guerendo, I don't think you have the explosive ability you have with Isaac Guerendo. I don't think you're as dangerous when it comes to the passing game when Isaac Guerendo is out there. But Patrick Taylor, he's going to make the right read. He's probably going to go to the right hole. The problem with him is there's no get up and go. There's no explosiveness. There's no speed element to his game. But if you need him to pick up 3-4 yards, he can do that for sure. He understands this offense pretty well. So I have some confidence in Patrick Taylor running the ball. I don't know how explosive it'll be. That changes the game. The one guy with the explosiveness is Israel Abanikanda. But like you brought up, how much is he going to understand this offense? I think there are some generalities that he's going to have a pretty good idea of because the offense he came from with the Jets is similar as far as scheme. And it's kind of one of those things that as long as you can get the verbiage down, you can figure it out. So I would love to see him running in this experience for 2 years playing with the Jets. That's the same thing. You run outside zone a certain way. You do things a certain way. Now, Bobby Turner expects his guys to do it a little bit different. The 49ers do everything a little bit different. But let's not forget that offense originally came from Mike LaFleur and the 49ers run game coordinator. So he brought it in. They also had they had a John Benton, the offensive line coach. They coached it the same way. So maybe that will help him a little bit in his transition. But yeah, I mean, Patrick Taylor might have to go get it done. I want Isaac Guerrero. But I still think the 49ers can be successful. The Rams give up 140 yards per game on the ground. They are not good stopping the run game. If the 49ers get it going, they could really turn this into a slugfest that I think could go their way.
Mr. Corey mentions how in the last game, Brock Purdy threw that pass to Ronnie Bell that probably would have iced the game, but Bell dropped it. And now Ronnie Bell's on the practice squad. So that's a good point to make. Then he asks, before that, he asks a question. Would you rather this 49ers team with no McCaffrey, Ayuk, Mason, Hargrave, and basically no Trent Williams make the playoffs, or miss the playoffs and get a top 15 pick? I'd rather top 15 pick. I know that a lot of fans think that way, but I'm always going to take the postseason berth because you never know what's going to happen. Plus, it sucks to sit and watch your team not in the playoffs. So that's me personally. Now, if they were in a situation where this was just an old team like the 1999 49ers once Steve Young went out and you have no chance and you really need to start rebuilding and getting more draft picks, then maybe I would change my tune. But with this team, I'm still going to go playoffs.
Yeah, I'm a competitive guy. If you give me a chance, I'm going to go prove that not only can, I get there, that I'm going to win when I do get there. And that's the mindset of pro football players. There is not a single player on that football team that's thinking about a draft pick. There's not a single coach on that football team thinking about a draft pick. That's the front office guys. They'll think about that. But John Lynch, he's a competitor too. He wants to win and get into the playoffs because they all know if you can get hot now, and they're all acting like this is the playoffs, if you can get hot and carry that in, you never know what's going to happen. And if the 49ers going to run and go 10-7, and that's a tall ask, I get it. I don't want to say they're going to, but I'm just saying, you go 10-7, how different is that from the 1988 San Francisco 49ers that went 10-6 and won the Super Bowl? It's not. You just get hot at the right time. December, January is the key. So you never want to turn it down. Now, Mr. Corey, if this was a top 10 pick we were talking about, that meant the 49ers were out of the mix. Then I'm all in for losing as many games as you can and take that whatever 10 all the way down to 5 or whatever it is, because there's just so much value. But when you're in that intermediate range, 10-15, I'm going for the playoffs. And if I have a chance to make the playoffs, I want my team to do it. And I think that's exactly what the 49ers want to do.
Yeah, and I get his thinking is that, look, this team has not been good this year. They're not going to be able to compete. But like you said, you never know what's going to happen. Somebody can get hot, and that happens. Go back to 2011. There's no way that New York Giants team was as good as the Packers team that they beat, or that 49ers team that they beat. But they got hot, and then they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So you just never know. And look at like Detroit. They've been the class of the conference, but their defense is banged up. Philly, you never know when they're going to implode. They always seem like they're teetering on the brink of disaster. If Seattle wins the division, the 49ers have already beat them once in Seattle. So I definitely think they could do that again. But yeah, I definitely understand. And I think that you made a great point in the way that you differentiated between a middle of the pack draft pick and a top 10 pick. That is a little different. And so I definitely would agree. Mr. Corey said we're beating Detroit 3 days after my birthday. All right. Well, let's finish up with this. What do the 49ers need to do to beat the Rams, and are they going to do it?
First off, they need to run the football. I don't care if it's Isaac Guerrero, Patrick Taylor, Israel Abanikanda, whoever it is. They need to run the football consistently, because if they do, they are going to put a world of hurt on that Rams defense. That secondary is not good enough to be able to stick with the 49ers. There is some real fundamental issues with what happens when Quentin Lake goes to nickel corner. I think the 49ers have some matchup advantages there. Whether it's George Kittle or Jawan Jennings, they can find matchups in the passing game, but that needs to be on third and short. So you need to be able to win on first and second down with a successful running game. And if they can establish that running game, it's going to play into what they want to do with the play action pass. Now, it'll be a little bit more difficult to play action pass the Rams because they run that 3-4 and they like to bring Jared Verse and they like to bring Byron Young off the edge, and those guys can get into Purdy's face. But if you establish the run game and they have to slow up a little bit, they have to go ahead and kind of go down and squeeze it down, then you're going to create some separations for those boots. So it's all about run game and then getting that play action game going, getting George Kittle involved. If you can do that, you can take over this game offensively, control the clock, and keep Matthew Stafford on the sidelines and limit the amount of opportunities they have. With that, then your defense has to stop the run. You have to make sure you keep them in third and long. Make it difficult for Matthew Stafford. Don't allow him to just come up there and get those little quick reads. Now, he's going to make his plays, and you've got to be able to withstand those. The main thing is when they make plays, make the tackle and move on. Allow those plays to go. Because if you start trying to make whole shot plays, if you start trying to do too much, they're going to get those big time touchdowns that you can't allow to happen. So make them be methodical, make them earn it. Force third and longs the same way you did against Chicago, and you're going to have a shot because Chicago wasn't good on third down for the season, and the Rams aren't either. 36% conversion rate on third down. Get them to third and long, you can get off the field, get your offense the ball back. That's the key this week. So run games are going to be very important. 49ers got to get it done, and they got to slow down the Rams. If they do, yes, I think they can win this game. In fact, I would pick the 49ers to win this game over the Rams.
All right. So run the ball, stop the run, and don't turn the ball over. That's
huge,
key to success for the 49ers on Thursday. Anything you want to add before we take off?
Yeah, the 49ers also need to be successful in the red zone again. Last week, they went against the best red zone defense statistically in the NFL. 40% of the time they gave up touchdowns. 49ers were 5 of 6. And let's be honest, a Ricky Pearsall holding call away from 6 for 6, just dominant for the 49ers. If they can reproduce that, they're going to have a really good chance to beat the Rams, score touchdowns, make them kick field goals, because they are a good red zone offense. The Rams at 58%, they scored touchdowns. Well, guess what? The 49ers are all the way up to 52% all of a sudden. So that's going to be a key. The other key, can the 49ers red zone defense stop somebody, please? At any point, just stop somebody. The Bears were perfect last week. Let's get a freaking stop. I think our only stop was on a 2-point conversion play. Let's get a stop in the red zone. That's going to be a key in this game as well.
Great stuff as always, Ant. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody else watching or listening wherever you're at. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. Do all those things that help us out. Have a great time watching the game tomorrow night. And let's go Niners. Let's get that win and keep moving toward turning this thing around.